My name is Ken Gerards and I'm a senior BI consultant for Kohera. The people who attended the first webinar might remember I showed a glimpse of each of the elements in the Power BI family. Today we focus on the first family member, Power Query. Just like last time, the main part of this session will be a demo, or rather several small demos. But before we start with the demos, I would like to begin with a really short presentation of the Power BI family. As you can see, the presentation has a very limited content. So first we start with a general overview of the Power BI family members. Then we have a high-level look at Power Query, and the main part, of course, will be the demos. Looking at the Power BI family, the family has 5 members today. Power Query to get the data you want and transform it into what you need. Power Pivot to combine all the data in a model so you can use it later on to analyze everything. This is the heart or the brains of the family, depending on how you see it. The most important part. Power View, which is the primary visualization tool in the Power BI universe, mainly because it gives you interactive charts. Then we have Power Map, which is also a visualization tool, but specifically for geographical data. It is also possible to show data on a map using Power View, but Power Map goes way beyond the possibilities of Power View in this area. For example, with Power Map, you can create videos and show changes over time. There is also Power BI Q&A, which is the youngest member of the family. And if you're using the Power BI site in Office 365, you can use Q&A to type in text about what you want, and based on your input, Power BI Q&A presents you with a visualization. Of course, all the family members are related. This is a nice visualization I found to show how you should see the relations between the Power BI family members. I think it's best to follow the flow. So first we have Power Query to collect and structure the data we want. And this data can originate from different sources, just like we can see here. Then we bring all the data together in a model using Power Pivot. And here we can also add calculations that can give you more insight in the data. And the final step is to bring the data to the user. And here we have several options. You can use traditional pivot tables or charts in Excel. They are very powerful nowadays, and the main advantage is that the users are familiar with them. You can also use Power View if you want to have more interaction between your charts. If you're building a dashboard, this will probably be your first choice. We also have Q&A, as mentioned before, and it's a Google-like interface to your Power Pivot model, but that's only available on your Power BI site in Office 365. And finally, there is a Power Map for fancy geographical visualizations. But today we focus on Power Query. Power Query, there are 3 elements that are important here. There's an element where we can search and find data. So if you don't know where to find information, you can search for relevant datasets on the internet using online search. Most results will come from Wikipedia, but there are also other datasets available. I'll show this in a small demo. Most of the time, however, you know where to find the data. Power Query gives you a lot of options to extract data from. I'm not going to give examples of all the possibilities, but I will show a couple of them. And when you have your data, the real magic begins. You can start to play around with the data to get the result you want. In the demos, I will demonstrate several transformations and powerful options you can use. And very important for a lot of business users, you can do this without any coding or formulas. So let's get to this. It's not, like I mentioned before, it's not one large demo, but several small demos. This way it's possible to show you more of the features than if we put everything in one big demo. Power Query is available in the Excel ribbon as one of the menu items here. So if we click on it, we can start to work with it. First off, online search. You can type in whatever you want to search about. I want to know something about inhabitants per country. It's good. And like I said before, most of the hits come from Wikipedia. But there is also a result from the World Bank, and I'm going to use this one in my demo. So I double click on it, and I can start to do something with it. So he loads the data, but I can also edit this dataset by double clicking or using the edit option on top. And now we can change our query. For example, change the name of a column, or making sure that the data type is correct, because these are decimal values, but you can see the data type is text. So I want to change it to decimal number, but unfortunately something goes wrong. Why is this? The original dataset is in American formatting, meaning there is a point as a decimal separator, and my computer is set up with Belgian formatting, and we have a comma as decimal sign. What do we have to do? We transform, replace values, and replace all the points with commas. I have to do it on this column. Like that. And now if I go to data type, I should be able to put it in there as a decimal number. And we can start to work with it. So close and load. Other options we have in Power Query. We have the From Web option. We have an example where we want to know how many bankruptcies occur in Belgium and its regions. Our Ministry of Economy is so nice to provide this information on a website, but of course we want to have it in Excel so we can use it for further analysis later on. How can we do this? We can copy the URL, paste it here, and start to work with the query. Power Query checks out the website and sees there are two tables available it might use for its query. We have the document, but that's the layout of the website, and we have table 0, which contains the data we really want to use. If I double click it, I can start to work with it. We have 5 rows here, but if I look at the original website, we see that Belgium, the bottom line, is actually the sum of the 3 regions, and Plaats van de Onderneming is a title, it's a label, so actually it's also a row we don't want to use in our dataset. To filter out rows, we just select or unselect the rows we want. this is starting to look like a dataset we can use. For analysis purposes, we prefer to have our information row by row and not in columns like they're provided here. We have an option that's very useful in this case, unpivot columns. So we select all the columns with the values and click unpivot columns, and the hard work is already done. If you want to do something similar to this without Power Query, you would be having more difficulties. There's just one thing I would like to change, because I see here our attribute contains the text datum, and year, and I'm actually only interested in the year part. How can we do this? There is split column by delimiter. I'm going to split it based on the space, and it's done. I don't need this column anymore, so I'm gonna remove it. And now to make things better and more readable, I'm gonna rename columns. And voila, we have something we can work with. But most of you will probably, you don't have an example where you can use information from the internet, and most of the data will come from Excel files or other databases. I'm not gonna give you a demo with other databases because this data is already very structured and hopefully you don't have to clean it anymore. But if you get data from files, this can be a different story. The example or the demo I'm going to give now is about bank information. I like to keep track of my financial situation and maybe check the shopping expenses of my wife. Of course, you can go online and check your transactions there, but nowadays all banks offer the functionality to download your transactions. For me, this is interesting because this way I have more options to check what is going on. There's only one catch. Our family has more than one bank account at different banks. And every bank has their own layout for the export file. So how can we combine them? Let's see what we can do with Power Query. I have an Excel file from Keytrade Bank, and I'm gonna read it. He sees the Excel file contains one sheet, export. So I'm gonna see what data we have in there. First thing you can see immediately is that the first row, well, those are actually the headers. Luckily, we have a function for that. So like that, it's done. I don't think I want to do anything more than this with this data set. We can work with it. The only thing I'm going to do is add a column, because if I combine the data sets later on, I still want to know what the source of the transaction was. So in this case, Keytrade. And let's say OK. Close and load. So now we have transaction information from Keytrade. We also have a CSV file from Fortis Bank. Here we see that the first line doesn't contain any transaction information, so we're gonna remove this one. And now our first line are the headers again. So this is starting to look like an interesting data set. If we compare it to the data set from Keytrade, there are still a couple of differences. And if we want to combine the two data sets, we have to make sure those differences are gone. So we have to make sure all columns have the same names and that we have the same columns in both datasets. So we go check them one by one. Valuta datum, valuta datum. Reference, that's called Atrexol here. So we're going to rename it. Typo. Yeah, you have to make sure you don't make any typos here. Beschrijving, that's omschrijving there. Here we only need bedrag. Valuta. Datum. Rekening. This is a column that doesn't exist in the gate rate dataset, so I'm gonna remove it. This also isn't available in the other dataset, so we're going to remove them. And finally, just like we did in the first dataset, I'm going to add my own column, bank, for this, and we're okay. File, close and load. So now we have two datasets in one Excel file, and we could use Excel older options to combine them, but there are also very easy Power Query capabilities to combine these two datasets. We can build a third dataset. We're going to reference our first one, meaning this dataset will start where the first dataset ended. So we have our key trait information again. But now we're going to edit it and we're going to append another query, meaning we're going to add the lines from the Fortis dataset to this dataset. We go to the bottom, you will see the lines from Fortis are added to this dataset. This, you could say I'm done now, but it's important to check your data types, just like I did in my first demo, where I changed the value, the data type to decimal. Same here, we have date values here, and if you want to filter on them, now it's text. You only get text options to filter on them. If you change them to date, you will see that you have date filters now, where you can filter on calendar logic. And I think that's very interesting. And also, if you have amounts, please change them to decimal numbers or whole numbers, depending on your needs. But now we're done, and we can close and load, and we have one dataset in a good formatting, where we have all our transactions combined. Our next demo, I have a file I downloaded from the Flemish government, and here we have the number of social homes provided by organizations per province. So they put it in a table. It's very nice to read, with totals and grand total at the bottom. But I want to do my own analysis, so I can't work with the data in this layout. I'm going to change it. So I'm going to use Power Query, and we have an option from table here. He recognizes the table that we have in our Excel and reads all the data. First thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean the data, because we have NULL values, we have blanks, we have minus signs, and those are all the same. They all have the same meaning. They all say this field has no value. So we're going to replace them and make sure we all use NULL. transform. Here, replace values. Replace blanks with well. And here we're gonna replace the minus sign also with NLL. And NLL is just another way of saying there is no real value. And now we're gonna transform our data so we can work with it in our analysis later on. For example, all these lines we would expect to have Antwerpen as a value. Same here, we want Limburg as a value. Lucky for us, there is an option, fill down, and the magic happens. Now all the fields are filled. And we can filter out the end totals and the totals, because if we want totals, we will add them ourselves in analysis. And just like we've done before, we're gonna unpivot these columns and rename them. And we're done. So I think this is very powerful, the fill down and the unpivot option, to work with Excel sheets you receive from other people, because if you have to do it manually, it's going to take you hours, and this way, well, you just seen it, just took me a couple of minutes. I have two small demos left. There is one that's a very specific case, but I still want to show it because I know a lot of people from IT departments get the question to give people a list of files that are in a certain folder. If they want to do it in the past, they had to create a script and they had to export it to a CSV file or something like that, and then import it in Excel. Always meant some work. Now we have an option from folder. You type in the folder you want the information about. And you get a list of files that are in that folder. Now you can filter on extensions because maybe you're only interested in files with the extension MSI, or maybe you're interested in files that are larger than about 10 megabytes. In these attributes we have more information, like size, and we can filter on it. Larger than about 10 megabytes, and this is the result we wanted. So you see, very easy to do if you want to get a list of files that are in a certain folder. And which is also interesting to know is that he also checks the subfolders. So I think it's a very convenient tool. For my last demo, I'm gonna check out the from other sources options. Some of these options are quite exotic. I'm not gonna use all of them, but for example, if you're gonna look on Power Query demos, you're probably gonna find a demo on Facebook online, but the business use is limited, I think. So I'm gonna give you a demo based on Microsoft Exchange. You can actually query your own mail account. I've put in my credentials before, so it's connecting to my mail account, and you can see here you can check out your mail, calendar, the people you have, tasks, or meeting requests. For the demo, I'm going to use the mail. What's the story of the demo? If you check out time management articles, they often suggest to put a rule on if you're in CC or not, because the thought is that if you're in CC, that's not as important as when you are in the to part of a mail. So I'm gonna look at my mails and see who puts me in CC the most. I'm only interested in the sender and if I'm in CC, so I'm only gonna keep these two columns and remove all the other. Now I can filter on if the CC contains my name. Let's see if yeah. And now I get a list of all the mails that have been sent to me with me in my email address in CC. I want to know who is sending me these mails. I can remove this one again. And what I really want to know is who is sending me those mails in CC the most. And there is an option here, group by sender name, and he's gonna count the rows. And here we see there is a guy, Sam Steen, who's sending me a lot of mails in CC. So instead of just putting a rule on your mails to filter out mails, maybe it's better to be proactive and ask the people who often put you in CC why they are doing this. And with Power Query, you can see, very easy to find that. That's it for the demo part. So this was our presentation about Power Query. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I will try to answer them. I don't see any questions appearing. Yeah. Okay, first I'm gonna answer the question from Maren. If the data changes online, you can just push refresh in your Power Query and the data will be refreshed. So you have to set it up once and you can refresh it afterwards. I don't see, wait, yeah, well, for Cathy Verbrugge, I'll see if I can try and do it again. It's the check out my full screen again. I hope everybody can see my screen again. Okay, so what you do is there is an option, transform and fill. So you select the column and you have fill down, and then he's gonna fill all the empty values until he finds a new value. So if we do it like this, fill down. Yep. All the empty values are filled. I don't understand the question from Cathy Willems. Stan, yes, we are planning webinars about all the members of the Power BI family. Sorry, so Power Pivot will certainly be on the list. Okay. Cathy Willems, yes, indeed, you need a internet connection to get the data from web. The recorded versions will be put online on YouTube, so if you want to review it later on, that's no problem. We have a Kohera channel on YouTube where you can find all our webinars. Yes, John, if your original files change, as long as the structure remains the same, you can just do a refresh in Power Query and your data is refreshed. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions, and that's it for this webinar then. I hope you enjoyed the webinar and that you will join us for our next webinars about the Power BI family. Have a nice day.